Welcome to Beyond the Breakwater, where just beyond the crashing waves of fear, discomfort, and doubt lies the greatest potential for life transformation. We want to guide you into the open waters where the calculated risk you take becomes the turning point for you or your organization to thrive. So draw up your anchors and prepare for departure in this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater. All right, welcome back. We are on with another episode of Beyond the Breakwater. I am Lyndsay, and with me is Ed.
Good to see you, Lyndsay.
Always.
It's always fun.
It is. So today, we're kind of going to get into some practical steps of what people can do as they're firing up their engines, taking risks, and they're getting ready for departure, which is probably terrifying. And we've kind of been talking about all of these things from a concept level and giving some practical little steps along the way. But I think today's discussion is going to be one that people can really benefit from as they're taking their very first big step. So Ed, as you've processed through where God is leading you, have you always been able to do it alone?
No, nothing's ever done alone. But there always has to be a point person. And I think if there's one thing I've learned is that you have to be willing to step out first. Because if you're not willing to step out, nobody's going to follow behind. I know we talked about the river, about, a pastor has to be willing to get in the river.
Talk about that a little bit more.
Okay,
Yeah.
so really quick, if we're looking at the river, and the river represents every unbeliever is born into this river of sin, ends in a waterfall. And so he's called the church to get back into the river. And oftentimes churches leave the river, huddle up, and they're nowhere near the unbelievers. So you have to almost picture every unbeliever is in this river, and they're going to end in a waterfall, which we call hell. And so God is leading and asking pastors, get in that water. And you can't be in the back. You can't push. Think about, sheep. You can't go behind them and push them all into the river. You just can't do that. So the pastor, as the shepherd, has to go in. And I know we've talked about this, but if I go as the shepherd, ankle deep, everybody in the church is right behind me on shore, rooting me on. Way to go, pastor. Keep going. If I go knee deep, now some can get in ankle deep. If I go waist deep, others can go knee deep and ankle deep. And actually what I've always noticed is that it's like a V. I may be the first one. If I go shoulder in, then maybe there's just a couple that are, waist. But now there's maybe a few more that are knee deep and a few more that are ankle deep, and you kind of go in like a V.
Yeah.
But it's not till I'm all in that you give the freedom to the church to be all in.
Yeah. So when I'm thinking of step one being, okay, God gave you a big dream. God nudged you. You are feeling led to, okay, I think this is something that we really have to do. Step two is you can't do it alone. You gotta put your foot in one step.
Right.
But next after that, it's you have to assemble a team around you. How do you know who you would want on that team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I got to take a step back though. Before you ever think about your team, I think there's a lot of prep work, let's say for the pastor. I know we talked in the last session, we talked about a strip mall. There were times that I would go over there and just walk. I didn't bring anybody with me. I didn't bring anybody along me, and I'm just walking. I do a lot of walking and talking. God and I walk and talk a lot. And I will actually go places and say, is this a ministry that you're leading us into? So I have to do the preparatory work. And I need to be the one, first of all, to see, do I think maybe this is a place where God is taking me and then others and the church? That's like me getting in knee deep. But it's kind of like going out at night. The church doesn't know what you're doing, kind of sneak out at night, wade in the water. You're kind of checking things out. You're wondering if God is leading you. You don't say a word yet. And you're just exploring something that maybe God put on your heart, and you're going maybe to that location and you're praying. Is this something are we supposed to start a ministry? Let's just say a baseball ministry, okay? Well, then go to where there's fields and walk the fields and say, God, is this a ministry that you're calling us to church as a church to do? And so now you're just walking around all the baseball fields, and people are like, what are you doing? Go at night. Nobody knows you're there. So you have to explore as a shepherd with God into things that maybe he's putting on your heart that you have to go explore. So now once you've explored it, then, of course, you bring a couple of people with you. And you just like, Lord, who should I bring with me on this journey? And then you bring one or two people with you on the journey and just say, I'm thinking about this. What do you think of this?
How do you pick those people?
Well, it usually has to do with what the dream is. Okay, so in the last time we talked about the possibility of maybe getting a little bit more strip mall. I mean, we have 3 units and we're maybe looking at 9 more. And so I had breakfast with a realtor last week. And when we sat down and I just said, I just want to share with you, I'm on this journey. I have no idea where it's going. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. This seems to be your field of expertise, and I just want to share with you what seems to be happening or maybe where God might be leading. And I just spelled it all out. His name is Matt. I spelled it all out for him. And then I just said, what do you think? And so that's part of my process. And then always at the end of a meeting, and this is what I did with Matt too, I said, well, who do you think I should be speaking to? And then he gave me a couple of people that I should speak to. And so what do? Now I've made appointments this week. I'm going to go speak to those other people because God brought one person into my life. Now he's starting to bring more people into my life. And I'm getting a little bit more bold and I'm sharing it with more people because I notice when I share it with somebody, now there's some accountability. And we have a great example of that. We talked a little bit about it last week. We had a pastor who came and saw the ministries. We called it Beyond the Breakwater, saw the ministries, went back, and I could not believe that the very next Sunday, he said, okay, church, in his message, there's something I need to talk to you about, and it's Beyond the Breakwater. And what he did is he put it out there. And that was like a bold move because once you put it out there, you can't take it back. So he put it out there. Now it's going to be interesting to see who God brings into his life and who God's actually removes from his life. Because some people are going to be like, I'm not doing this. We're out of here. We're going to go join another church.
Yeah, I had actually emailed him a couple days ago and just told him, I watched your message. I'm so excited for you. I'm also shaking in my boots for you, and I'm praying for you. And
I bet he is petrified because when you say that stuff, not only as a communicator, but as a pastor, when you say it, 2 things happen. First, I would call that pastor is now an arsonist. Let me... See, pastors think of themselves as firemen, but they shouldn't think of themselves that way. They should think of themselves as arsonists. And here's what I mean by that. There's no pastor out there who doesn't have these little flare-ups at church. Like people complaining about that, people not happy with this, and wish you would have done that, and you said this. Well, I decided somewhere along the way that instead of being a fireman trying to put all the fires out, because when you're putting fires out, like trying to stop all that stuff from happening, it doesn't work. So you know what I learned to do? Be a pyro as a pastor.
You're crazy.
I know it sounds funny, but I am. Because here's what you do. When you put something, like you throw this idea out to the church, right? First of all, guess what everybody's talking about?
You know exactly what they're talking about.
You know what they're talking about. And some are like, they're throwing, I don't know what you call them, Molotov cocktails. I mean, they're just like, they're going crazy, right? Like firing against it, mad about it, don't like it, all these things. But you know what the church is talking about.
Yeah. And then you have someone like me who puts out all of the fires behind it.
Yeah. I'm afraid I think I have a whole team of fire people that are right behind me putting out fires because I throw it out to the church. And this is what happened with this pastor. He threw it out before the church. And I can promise you what every single person is talking about. And even the people that weren't in church are going to be told, man, did you miss the best Sunday ever because listen to what our pastor said? So you create this whole movement within the church of those, some feel left out, and they're going to go listen to the message. And others are like, now you know what everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by pastors need to be pyros, not firemen.
Yeah. And so when I had emailed Jim, he had responded exactly of like kind of what we're talking about. But it was interesting because I was expecting him to say, what did I get myself into once I opened my mouth? But it was actually, he had visited, when he had visited, he was sitting in our staff meeting. And it was then that he thought, what on earth did I get myself into? But he took a step regardless because he saw the worth in it and how necessary it is for the church to join God in the community and get outside of its walls and outside of just being a club or a huddle.
Right.
So something he had asked for in this message was he had prayed for a core team of people to be raised up to carry out this mission. So Ed, can you kind of talk a little bit about who to bring on that team? I think you've talked about the investigating parts. You've talked about talking to realtors, to CEOs of companies. The immediate thing that I'm thinking of is you have a whole church congregation that you can tap on. Is that where it ends?
No, not by any means. I think we're still jumping ahead a step or two because when you're thinking of doing something, there's this time I walk and pray a lot. Like, God, who's coming to mind? Like, you know the direction this is going in. Is there somebody that I need to share this with? Sometimes you need encouragers. Well, you always need encouragers. But sometimes God will raise up the encouragers first. And it may have nothing to do with what you're doing, but you're raising up people to start praying for you. Quietly, I have quite a few people that I will share things with them before anybody else ever knows.
For the purpose of?
For the purpose of supporting me in prayer, like, is this something that I'm supposed to do or not do? And I don't let it go public really quickly. I mean, so when there's an idea, God's leading us to do something, who are the people that, and it's always funny because, like, I might be out somewhere and somebody will meander up to me. And I'm like, would you pray for this? Nobody knows about this. This is a really big dream, but would you start praying for it? And so I start to surround myself with people who are praying. And then slowly, who else? Okay, God, who else do I need on this team? And it could be something so really small. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Who are the right people on the team? And then when you start to talk about it, now you're held accountable for it. So then you start to ask, like for us, because we're thinking about some real estate, I met with a realtor. And I said, you need to know, I'm not asking you to be in this inner circle as a realtor that I'm hiring. I'm inviting you because you have a heart for this. You love doing this. I don't think you're ever going to get any business out of this. So I want you to be part of the team to tell me what I don't know. And so he was like, tell me more about it. And so I was just walking him through everything that we're talking about. And he brings an element that I don't have. He brings an expertise I don't have. So when I start thinking about a team, who are the experts? Who are the people? And you always need faith people. You need people that are just like, I don't have a clue what we're doing, but let's take a step of faith. That's actually how we started the clinic. Two guys who know nothing about healthcare, Jim and I. And we stepped forward not knowing the first thing about healthcare, but we found a dream. And it was all because of one little comment that Jim had one time. And that's what I'm talking about. His name is Jim. And one time in a meeting, I said, I'm just thinking about this, just thinking about a clinic. And he came to me one day and said, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it by myself. And I said, well, how about we do it together? And so here's two guys. One's an IT guy. I'm a pastor. And we're talking about opening up a medical clinic. Do you know how insane that is?
That is crazy, especially medical.
So now, who do you need? What do you not know? So, and that's just where we are, Lyndsay. So I don't want any listener to go, that is way beyond me. No, scale it way back. You want to start a sports ministry in your local community for kids? Great. Who are the people that you know that love sports? Who are your prayer people? So I want to scale this way down because this could be the simplest thing of what's the dream? Walk and see if God is solidifying a dream. Now, who do you need to share it with? And you start asking God who he's going to raise up to maybe come alongside you so that now you started forming a team and go for skill sets. And here's what I mean by that. So we did open up the medical clinic called Gateway. If you looked at the board, it's amazing. We have somebody who's in insurance. We have an attorney. We have a banker. We have somebody who's in mental health. We have somebody who's a marketing person. We have somebody else who was in banking. Now he's in insurance. And we have another insurance agent. And what we did is we've been assembling this amazing team of people who have skill sets that we're going to need. And then we start bringing them all together to say, what can you add to the table so that we can do this in a godly way?
Are these all people that are in your church congregation?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. No, they're not. And I think that's the fun of this. And if I would speak to every pastor, and it doesn't matter if you have 30 people or if you have 3,000 people or more, it doesn't matter. Who are the people in your sphere of influence? Who are the people that you know? And then go tap on them and say, I have a dream for this. Do you want to be a part of it? And maybe the part they're going to play is speaking into my life. Maybe they're going to say, have you thought about, oh no, I didn't think about all those things. And you start writing them down. And so you just go have coffee with them, share the dream, and say, would you like to be part of it? And you go to other people and say, would you start praying about this dream? And so you have others that are praying about it. And so the size of the dream doesn't matter. The process is the same. Go quietly and find out where God's leading until you go, I think God's leading here. Now start going talking to people and then start assembling your team.
Yeah, and I think I've seen it happen where you specifically did not know everybody that was on this board. There was I think the newest member that I'm aware of. It's like we had met at the Rotary Club, and she's talked about connections that she knows. So these are people that are outside of the church congregation.
Right.
Talk a little bit about who they are and how you know that they're being called to the same mission, because I think some people might be feeling if they're not within the same congregation, they're going to derail the church's mission because we're not on the same page.
Yeah, boy, that's a really good question that you're asking. If I think about the process, one, it's my walking and talking with the Lord. Like, is there anybody that you're putting in my pathway that we should ask to be part of this venture? And we actually went to talk about, I don't even remember what the topic was for the Rotary, but we went and talked to a group of people.
Yeah.
And while we're talking to the group of people, one person stood up and came up to us later and started chatting with us. We had no idea, absolutely no idea. And this person turns out to be this person who loves marketing. So in every venture, you let God lead, but we have a lot of business people that are in like our clinic because this is a board made up of the community. So if it's in a church and you're like, okay, I've got my church, should I just have people on this committee? My answer to them would be no. Ask some people from within the church who might have a heart for what you think God is calling you to do, at least to explore, and start having coffee. Just go out and have coffee and say, here's what I'm thinking about. What do you think about this? And you'll know right away, are they the right person to be on the team or not? And when they're not, then you say, okay, Lord, who else should be on that? And so you just go. And so there's this exploratory of just starting to have coffee or have lunch with people. Share a little dream. Say, I just have a dream to do this. I think God's putting this on my heart. What do you think about it? Yeah. And God seems to raise up the people that are part of your team, and the other people you're like, no, they're not the right person for the team.
What if they have the passion, they're excited about healthcare, or you're doing a sports ministry, they're excited about sports, but what if they disagree with you theologically?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I think there's some discernment. I think you have to decide like what exactly you're talking about when you talk about theology. Are you talking about a major? Are you talking about a minor? Are you talking about, do you believe in Christ as your Savior? Or not? Are you talking somebody who's a universalist versus somebody who's a Christ follower? I think we have to narrow that down a little bit. When you're talking about serving the community, this would be my biggest encouragement. Go for the majors. You want people in your team who believe that Jesus went to the cross, died for our sins, rose 3 days later. There's an undeniable. We're saved by grace through faith alone. Okay, high level. Then you you kind of hope there's differences. You know, this person might believe different about baptism than you, but we're not talking about baptism. We're talking about how to serve a community. We're talking about how to lead a ministry. So you broaden this to go for what are the majors, and you make sure that you've got a team of people that are majoring in the majors, that they're Christ followers. But then you go for skill sets.
So if you say you do have the team of the right people on board, they don't all go to your church.
Right.
Is there any risk to either the church or the ministry when you have a board or a team of people that exists that are all outside of the church?
Well, I think you go before the church and the church board, whoever the governing body is, and you start casting a dream and say, this seems to be like bigger than us. And so I'm going to invite other people. So we're going to have it could be a ministry of the church. Then it's probably from the church, by the church, for the church, and hopefully for the community. But once you start going a little bit broader than that, you would laugh, because if you look at our governing board of a medical clinic, we have no medical people on the board. We don't.
It's interesting that wasn't listed as a skill that needed to be.
That was not listed as a skill.
Yeah.
But you see, we wanted business people. We wanted influential people in the community. We wanted people that were in nonprofits. You know, we specifically asked God, lead us to people who have the skill sets that we need. But see, they're not running the operation. They're overseeing the ministry of the operation, okay, along with me. But then in the medical, I mean, I don't want anybody to misunderstand, you know, but we have nurse practitioner.
Yeah, right.
We have a second
medical
nurse
people.
practitioner. You know, we have a person with 20 years medical experience. We have a medical assistant. These are the people that are running the clinic. But the board, you actually want a whole different group of people. And it doesn't have to be, I know this is official and might be beyond some people.
Yeah.
So let's scale this down. If you want to do a sports ministry in your community, don't limit yourself to the church. Broaden it. Who else is in the community? Like one of the ministries that we're looking at doing, and I know last time we talked a little bit about a Kmart building, we'd like to do a sports ministry. And I actually met with somebody who's running the tennis center. Didn't know if he's a follower of Christ. Saw him at a luncheon. He said, let's get together. See, that was a God thing. We got together, told him the dream about having a Kmart into a sports center. And he's like, man, am I in? I know a lot of people all across the country in sports. I'm in. Well, God ordained that.
Yeah.
So now he's part of our team if we move forward with this venture. I don't know if we will, but we're going to move forward. And I start to have fun watching who's bubbling up to be on the team. And pastors, if I could speak into their lives, don't limit it to your church. You have people in the church that have skills that you need. Seek them out. But then say, this is for not our church, this is for communities. So who are the community players that God's starting to tap on your heart, and then go exploratory and meet with them, have coffee with them, and say, here's what I'm thinking about. Here's a dream. What do you think?
So getting people on board that are both, it can be from the church, but like you said, also branching into the community, whether that's on a board or that is volunteers in the grocery store or the medical staff at Gateway. Talk about the benefit that has when you welcome in others from the community to that team.
Yeah, can I speak about the complexity first? It's how the church sets these things up. If you put it under your name, like let's say our church name is Messiah. If we would say, oh, this is Messiah's grocery store, you know what happens? I know this is a bad example. If you've ever seen cockroaches when somebody turns on the light, they scatter, okay? They hate the light. When a church puts a stake in the ground and they call it by their church, you know what happens at every other church? They scatter. Like, oh, you just put a stake in the ground?
Yeah.
You're on your own. Then the church can't do anything because they're trying to get others to be part of, quote, their church. So this is one of the things we learn. Like, that's why, as maybe listeners have heard us say, like, it's the Bridge Food Center. In fact, the church, don't tell anybody it's Messiah. is the quiet engine. We don't put Messiah anywhere. Nobody knows anything about it. We're the quiet engine. That gives us the freedom to go into the community and say, how would you like to help feed people in the community on a volunteer basis? And so we can begin to raise up more people, and you just kind of watch who bubbles up to the surface. And so at our food center, we have somebody who goes to the Catholic Church. She's one of our supervisors. We have somebody else who's in another denomination. She's one of our supervisors. There's somebody from our church as a supervisor. So we're welcoming the community. And when I showed up on last Saturday, it was awesome. There was another church that was running the food center last Saturday when I popped in. And when I popped in there 2 days ago, here was the Dow Credit Union in our community. It was like 6 employees from the Dow Credit Union were all running the store. See, it's so important that you let others come into the dream and participate in the dream with you. So whatever it is, big scale, little scale, quickly start asking God, who do you want to be on this team?
Yeah, that's huge. That, like, the impact that has in the community to now, like you talk about as a pastor stepping in and going all in, you've given the church the permission to also go all in.
Yes.
But when we can just stop with the claiming this space as ours with our branding and our name, it's just God's ministry. This is just a ministry that people can step into from a number of churches, from businesses, and to just see people's needs be met, to see people fed, to see people healed. That's exactly what Jesus's ministry was here on earth.
Yeah. I have to tell you a quick story. I might have shared this before, but it's so funny. I was at the bridge one time. I probably shared this, but I was checking somebody out at the register, and meaning, scanning their food. And so I'm scanning the food, and this person was there, and I was scanning his food, and he goes, I heard something. I said, oh, what did you hear? I'm like, bleep, bleep. He goes, I heard a church is behind this. I said, oh, really? He goes, mm-hmm. And so I'm still scanning his stuff, and he goes, you know what else I heard? I said, what? He said, I heard it was a church called Messiah. I said, really? He goes, mm-hmm. So I'm still checking out the garage. Then he goes, know what else I heard? I said, no. He said, I heard they like their pastor. I said, for real? He goes, yeah, that's what I heard. I heard they really like their pastor. And he's kind of, helped this thing. And I was like, wow. I said, I'll have to meet him someday. Well, the volunteers were like, they were laughing.
He wasn't pulling your leg.
Like, and I didn't have the heart to say, yeah, that was me. Yeah, I didn't want to tell him, but I was so excited that somebody could come in and shop and had no idea who any of us were, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because you see, the church should be running an incognito.
Yeah.
That way, all these other people can join you. And Lyndsay, I will be the first to tell you, I think the bridge, the most amazing thing of the bridge is all of the unbelievers who've come into the bridge to serve. And it's so amazing because they get to, over food, they're getting to watch Christ's followers love people. And they will always ask, always, this is one thing, if we've learned anything, unbelievers will always ask the same 2 questions in some way. It's their own way of saying it, but here's the 2 questions. They want to know who you are. Like, who are you people? And they'll ask it 10 different ways. And then they always ask, why are you doing this? And then, this is what I like to coach people. Keep that super simple. Like, when somebody's like, who are you guys? Well, we're just a bunch of believers in Christ who are running a grocery store. They're like, why are you doing it? And we'll just say something simple like, God loves us, and we just want to love others.
Yeah.
Super simple.
Oh my goodness. So
That's
simple.
all you got to do.
Yeah.
And then here's how you know if you said too much. If you say too much and they're not ready for it, physically they take a step back from you, from your presence. They will literally cross their arms, take a step back. They're like, whoa, I'm a little overwhelmed what you just said. But if they're like, I want to know more, and they actually take a step towards you, there's your open door to just share just a little bit more.
Yeah. I think that will come with time. Like, we've seen that with people, return customers and shoppers at the bridge. that come in hungry, but they leave being prayed over. They leave being supported and loved. And I think like as Christians, we have this pressure to, the gospel can be shared in two ways, whether it's a raindrop approach or tidal wave. And I think we feel the pressure to tidal wave and have it all out at once. Yeah. But just sprinkling it in with who you are and how Jesus has loved you and loving them in the same way, I think goes miles and miles and miles.
Right. And it's so amazing. So we're a grocery store and we're open 4 days a week. And it's funny, people will come every day we're open, every day. And they just want to, because there's something about the spirit of this place that God is just dwelling. Mm-hmm. And people come in and they buy like one thing, but they keep coming back. And you know why they're coming back. Because if you don't know Christ and you come into a place where Jesus is just reigning and just part of, and you walk into that and you know the Spirit of God is there. Unbelievers walk in and go, there's something about this. When you're living in darkness and you walk into light, there's something different. Mm-hmm. And they walk in and they keep coming back. Yeah. And you know why they're coming back, because they want to know. And then they're watching, like they want to see if your words and your behavior are consistent. Mm-hmm. And then every once in a while you get to push their cart out and then they want to know more.
Yeah, I think that's incredible to have someone return to a grocery store. Like I wouldn't go back to a grocery store more than once a week if I had to. If I forgot something, I'll get it next time. Right. But to have people coming back 4 times
a week?
Yeah.
To just this little grocery store in 2,500 square feet?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we only have like 150 items, so I don't know what they're buying over and over and over again, but they're buying something.
Right. Yeah. Well, Ed, what can listeners do before they leave?
Oh, Lyndsay, that's such a great question. It's always a good question. I think maybe that's just me, but I think if you're just starting this process out, if you're on square one, you're hearing this and you're like, how do I start? Get on your bike and go ride around your neighborhood. God, is there something that you're calling us to do? Get in your car, drive around the neighborhood. I'm notorious for just like, we're thinking about this strip mall that we've talked about. I would just go and sit in the parking lot. I walk around the parking lot. I just go and hang out there a lot. And I just ask God, are we supposed to do something here? And I don't know. So I keep going back. It's like a magnet. I keep going back. So I think listeners have to follow the inklings of their heart. Ask God first, is there something we're supposed to do? And it may sound crazy. It may sound crazy. Like, why would I go to a parking lot and walk around? Because that's what's going to lead to something else. So be open, follow Christ, follow those small whispers, those promptings, and see where it takes you. And then tell somebody.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater, a podcast of Elevate Community Ministries. Don't let the conversation stop here. You can email us at hello@beyondthebreakwater.org. We would love to chat with you, answer questions, plan a visit, and help you take your next step. We'll see you next week.